to help us understand more about the situation at hand and what may lie ahead in the future. I want to bring on Dr. David Grantham, a leading expert in the Middle East. David, thank you very much for joining us. So a lot of moving parts as of right now regarding this ongoing situation with Iran. What is your initial take regarding those strikes last night against Soleimani?
It's a powerful statement. The United States and Iran have often engaged in counter punching in a way that doesn't draw attribution directly to one another. This was a strike against a high-level official who runs a designated terrorist organization. So it was a clear statement from the United States that we will no longer play that game. We'll be open and we will defend our interests at the highest level.
And one thing I'm hearing from a lot of people, too, is that this would be one thing a little bit more problematic if this strike happened in Iran, for example. I mean, that would be a clear violation, or maybe not violation, but whatever you want to call it. It'd be a clear act of war of going into another country and engaging in a violent act there. But this happened in Iraq. Is that an important part of this whole story?
I think it is. And there's multiple ways you can dice this, but I think the key is understanding that he was there in order to support terrorist organizations who were targeting United States interests. He approved, according to intelligence reporting in the White House, he approved the attack on the U.S. Embassy. He approved of the prior attacks through their Hezbollah proxies there in Iraq. So I think it could be considered both a strategic military attack and a political statement saying, we're not going to allow you to come in here and operate freely, regardless of what pressure you put on the Iranian or Iraqi government.
And I think there's something to be said there, too, that Soleimani is a type of individual. He's operated in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. He has very much a very big footprint in the Middle East, especially when it comes to supporting terrorism. Can you tell us a little bit about who this man exactly is and what type of stuff he has been executing throughout the Middle East?
Well, he's been part of a larger movement. I mean, we can go through his history in leading multiple terrorist acts. Particularly, he made his name known in the intelligence community during the Iraq War when he was supporting and leading a lot of the operations against American forces, particularly in southern Iraq, where the Shia are the strongest. And so a lot of the IEDs that military encountered during the Iraq War and how it just became something that was almost insurmountable at one point. He orchestrated much of that, but he's part of a larger regime that goes back to Hezbollah and Lebanon, to Iran, to Syria, as you mentioned. So this is 40 years. He is merely an example of 40 years of Iranian aggression that has permeated all parts of the world, to include all the way to Buenos Aires.
And I don't think you can underestimate really how much he meant to the Iranian government, and they would say the Iranian people as well. I guess there is a debate for that. But when this happened last night, every single TV on Iranian state broadcasting went dark, and then it came back up with Soleimani pictures just kind of showing him with prayers being put over it. We saw it this morning, different military commanders coming out literally crying at the news of his death. Can you speak a little bit about what this man really means to Iran and whether or not, what kind of response, rather, I guess we should be looking for coming from Iran?
Well, he means a lot, particularly because he was so close to the Ayatollah. And that relationship is what really, I think, makes him an important player within the regime. And like you did mention, how the Iranian people respond to him and to his death could be light years away from, or significantly different, I should say, than the regime sees him. As for how we should look at it, I think that Iran, what's interesting about this situation is Iran has now been forced to respond. They can't let this one go. But in the past, many attacks, or as I said earlier, the counterpunch that goes on, the attribution hasn't been as clear, or no one's willing to fess up to who did it. This is clear. The U.S. did it, and we hit your top commander. So Iran, to save face, at least to save face, they're going to have to respond, but they're going to have to do it in a way that is proportional, but doesn't also escalate into something that they know they can't win. Here's what I would think. I suspect they're going to try to attack soft targets somewhere in the world, such as a synagogue. What they want to do is drag other people into this conflict that aren't necessarily involved. So if I was a betting man, I had to put my money somewhere, I would say Iran is probably looking at soft targets that would drag others into the war that or into a future war that don't want to be or didn't ask to be. So a synagogue in a city in Europe
Hmm.
gets attacked. They now could maybe look at Trump and say, yeah, this didn't have to happen. You did this. And that's what Iran, I think, is hoping for.
And, really quick, too, before I let you go, I mean, the protesters in Iran, I mean, they know well that Soleimani has been an individual who has even come after them at times. And across the Middle East, there's also different waves that are spreading. I mean, if I'm in Israel right now, I'm also very much so on high alert. But before I let you go, I want to ask, what is the U.S. looking out for now? I mean, the president spoke. He said he does not want a war. This is not a regime change effort. What is the U.S. looking for? Is it type of targets that you were saying before?
Yes, but I think the U.S., there's probably two things. I would imagine we're looking at cyber. That's going to be the first one. Iran can't go toe to toe militarily, but they can in the cyber realm. They're very effective, and it's frankly very difficult to defend against cyber attacks from a state actor who have that kind of sophistication. So I would imagine that's going to be the priority, is watching for that. The second thing is infrastructure. Again, Iran knows they can't go toe to toe with the military. So the best way to go after the United States, if you can't get into their country or don't want to execute an attack on the continental United States, is you look at infrastructure. Can you attack use a cyber attack to attack the grid, water supplies, transportation, anything that could debilitate America's ability to operate?
Yeah, I mean, this is an unprecedented situation right now, so it's going to be really interesting to see how the U.S. responds. But I'm assuming that they had a plan for all of this when they decided to launch that attack. But Dr. David Grantham, thank you very much for joining us tonight.